Thank you very much for such a wonderful forum. I wish I was here yesterday to kind of key into what was going on, but I think I get the gist today from what is happening. So, just before I go into the meat of my speech, I would like to go through a few things because I have spoken at many events, and most times when I speak, the likelihood is for people to accuse me of treating Africa like it's one town or one country. Of course, we know it's not a country. So this is my disclaimer, okay? I am African and I know about Africa, okay? And I know that there are 54 countries in Africa. It's not one country. I know it's a home to more than 1 billion people. I know there are more than 3,000 native languages. I know that there are many, many tribes and ethnic groups. I know that there are many creeds that are professed, okay? So it's really not one town, all right? I know that. But there are also common threads that run through the various African regions, the various African countries. And I've gone to many of these African countries and spoken to many people and studied the people. And I'm also part of one of these countries. So I do know that when I speak about an African value or African culture, that means this is something that is practiced in Ghana. This is how they see it most likely in Zambia. This is how they see it in Malawi or wherever you go to in Africa. So I know all of that. And that is how I would set up what I'm going to speak about today. Now, when you come into any African community, there is this understanding of maleness and femaleness. It's either you are a man or woman. I can't believe I'm saying this in Europe, but this is really the reality of the African people. It should be also your reality here in Europe, but unfortunately, perhaps it's not exactly the same in every part of the Western world. So there is a profound understanding that if you're a man, you're a man. If you're a woman, you're a woman. There is also the understanding that every single person, every single part of the society, everyone who is born into a society, you are going to be serving that society. You are going to be playing a role within that society as either a man or a woman. You're not going to be just a part of the community just for the mere fun of it. But I am part of my community as a woman, and I'm playing my role as a woman, proudly so. And anyone who is a man is doing the same thing in their own way, in their own, kind of in their own context. So this is demonstrated as early as birth. When a baby is born, people always want to know, is it a boy or a girl? Is it a boy or a girl? Once you hear a baby has been, why do they want to know whether it's a boy or a girl? Because already we want to imagine the role this child is going to play within their community. We want to understand what is this baby's future going to be like. Because obviously if it's a girl, it's likely that one day this girl is going to be a mother within the community. So within the African, even in the villages, even in the little villages where there is maybe perhaps poverty, where there is maybe perhaps very little education, they do understand that if a girl is born, this girl is destined perhaps to be a mother. If a man is born, this man is destined to be a father, but not only a father, he is destined to be a provider from the day you were born. If you are a woman, you are destined to serve and nurture a family and be the heart of that family. And if you're a man, perhaps one day you're destined to head a family. So it's from the time we are born, we know that, we understand it. It's rooted all through our life. It's reminded to us. When I was growing up, my mom always used to tell me, remember you're a girl, remember you're a girl. Even when I used to run around and, try to play rough with my brothers. But my mother always said to me, remember you're a girl. But why is that? And I always thought, oh, it's not fair. Why can my brother do this and I cannot? Because she understood that in the future, my destiny is to bring some kind of organization, is to bring some kind of civilization to the space that I stand in. That is not exactly the same thing as my brother is expected to do, even in the future. So it's reaffirmed all through our lives, and would they tell it to us? And even in some of our traditional practices, you can already see it in the way we get married, during the marriage ceremony, during the birthing ceremony, even the kind of honors that are given to people. It's either it's given to you as a man or as a woman. So because of all of this is why I've said that even, throughout your life, even up to when you're a grandfather, the Africans have an indelible male-female identity that is rooted into every single one of our communities, into our way of life. But there is something going on, and that is, I guess, why we are here today, because of this global weaponization of identity, the way things have happened from the West. It has started from the West. There has been a rise of the sexual revolution. I'm not going to go deep into this because obviously you are even more specialized than I am in this area, but that is the reality that since the 1960s, perhaps even a little bit before, there have been signs and things coming up. And of course, by the end of the 1960s, the sexual revolution set off. And the vision and mission of this sexual revolution is to completely remove the sexual differences, is to completely remove the sexual identity so that anybody can do whatever they want. A woman can have sex how she wants, a man can have sex how he wants, a woman can, do whatever she wants and live the life she wants and live like a man within community. And of course, from the 1960s up until now, they've completely demolished almost this difference between maleness and femaleness within the sexual revolution. So it's the way that we can self-identify, and also the fact that you have so much power now that has been put behind this push for sexual revolution, this push to remove the difference between maleness and femaleness. The power is coming from political backgrounds, but the power is also coming from financial superpowers as well, people who have the money. And so because they have the money, we see their hand and we see the way they are pushing through everything within different institutions in government and society. So now there is this war, an outright war on the indelible maleness and femaleness and this kind of identity, because this is where the Africans also stand. The fact that anytime we are sitting together on an international forum, we are being forced into the position. We're being forced to align with the West. And so Africa has experienced a lot of this push and a lot of this pressure that is coming predominantly from the West. So it's a fierce intolerance, what you already know, of the opposition to anybody who says, we don't want to accept this binary, non-binary, someone says non-binary, and you tell it to an African and they're saying that they don't want to accept it, is the fact that the superpowers in the West who are behind these changes, who are behind these ideologies, they have no tolerance whatsoever. It's totalitarian. It's a kind of a totalitarian ideology. That's what it is. So this actually puts Africa in a very vulnerable position, and I'll show you why. This is why. So before the 1970s, since the end of colonization, Africa, many parts of the world have been receiving ODA, which is official development assistance, which is also called humanitarian aid, from different more powerful members of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So that's Western countries, essentially. And this money, or this aid, or humanitarian aid, is increased. It's an increasing graph. It keeps increasing. It's not decreasing. Since the 1970s, beyond 2015, up to now, during COVID, it kept going up. So this is the reason why Africa is vulnerable, because we are receiving 1/3 of what you see on this graph. Africa receives about $50 billion every year in foreign aid. And this is why we are very weak at this time, because the donor is the master. Because of this, the fact that the donor is the master, the donor is giving us money, the donor is there supplementing our budgets in the African countries. They do have the power, And so they come to us, especially in the last 15 to 20 years, with a sort of cultural imperialism. It's the fact that they're telling African countries, you know, because we are doing this in the West and we are teaching our children this kind of, let's say, sex education that is going to teach them about this whole new sexual identity. You have to do this. There is a kind of ideological supremacy. Yeah? People talk a lot about white supremacy, and I tell them, do you know what? What I feel more of is ideological supremacy. It doesn't matter that I am black. It's the fact that because of what I believe, they see me as inferior. So there is a lot of ideological supremacy going on. Humanitarian blackmail, where they are withholding the aid and they are telling us to do exactly what they want in order for them to release money. It has happened many, many times across different African countries. It's hard to even keep track of it. And I call this, of course, it's not just me that calls it, but this is actually ideological neocolonialism, which itself has now become a very serious reality for us. And it kind of looks a bit like this. We have to submit. And if we don't submit, then we suffer. Moving on to the things that are happening with sexual identity, the reality of the fact is that, yes, a lot of the pressure is coming from the West. But within Africa, we also have our own issues. It's not that we don't have this experience of the universality of human experience, so psychological, emotional tendencies. Yes, in African countries, there are people who think, oh, you know, a man might be thinking, I feel a bit effeminate. We have those people. We have women who are more masculine. So I think it's the universality of our experience. We do have people with tendencies within our communities. So we have that as much as you do. And the fact that we are living in this small world that is viral, this small world where it's, you know, the social media is making everything go viral and people are seeing, even in Nigeria, the little Nigerian child is seeing a man in the US dressed as a woman, a man getting surgery, a woman getting surgery to become a man. We can see all of that. That is affecting us very seriously. Also, the reality that within the African countries, we are consuming so much coming from the West. A lot of our entertainment, a lot of our music, a lot of our movies. We are watching Netflix in Nigeria, believe it or not. So we are picking up a lot of those things. That the African youth are also on their mobile phones, their smartphones, even in the universities and the villages and the towns, the cities. We are seeing this kind of movement. And I've heard that there are over 400 million social media accounts across the African continent. So yes, we have our share of problems coming from what is coming from the West, because it's very easy through social media. But more than that, there is the driving force that is coming from the West. The driving force that root we have, the fact that there are, you know, perhaps some young people, some young men in Africa who think they're effeminate, or some young women who feel more masculine, it's there as a kernel. But the problem is the fact that there are real driving forces pushing them over the cliff. And that is coming from content creators in the West. People who are making music, people in Netflix, people in the film industry, people in Hollywood, media, social media, they are there. The political and public influencers and the social media influencers. The politicians are more progressive, more left-leaning. Those are the kind of politicians that we see in Africa. It's not the conservative politicians, because the conservative politicians, if I may say, with all due respect, they tend to stay in their countries. I would beg you to consider us, because in Africa, the kind of people who are coming to us are the leftists of the West. We're not seeing anybody else. And the financial influencers, of course. And one of those financial influencers I shall mention, because he's actually from here. This is a conference. This was an event that was held in South Africa a while back. And this organization actually still exists. It's the Gender Dynamics, they call themselves. And these are their funders. You can see it says partners and funders. And the person you see there, Open Society Foundation. That's from here. I'm not going to say more about it. But the founder of that organization is actually from here. And these are the kind of things they are doing. They are going into African countries with money, and they are funding all these kinds of programs as health, medical, when we have real medical issues and health-related issues across the African continent. So the Western tale and the cautionary tale. Very, very quickly, I won't be the one telling you the problems you are facing in the West with this kind of weaponization of sexual identity. But we see it in Africa, and we don't want it. The fact that the public discourse in the West has been completely destroyed. It has completely collapsed. There is no conversation anymore. It's this or nothing. So it's a kind of iconoclasm. They want to break up everything, even language. You say, you know, when I speak to somebody in the UK, you have to wonder what is their pronoun. You know, this is the kind of thing that coming from Africa I never even thought about. So public discourse in the West has been completely destroyed. The medical practice is also something that is quite seriously being affected, because the way you are treating patients now, they now don't want you to consider whether it's male or female, because you might be offending the person. I work at a hospital in the UK, and sometimes you know that somebody is a male, but then you cannot treat them like that because they don't want to answer male. But this is a medical practice. We still have to do these things. In psychology and counseling, there's also a lot of problems where people who are practicing in these fields cannot be open and honest to the people who come to them with worries or with problems or with confusion. Yeah, it's a kind of dysphoria. They come to them, but you're not allowed anymore in most parts of the Western world to speak the truth to people. So women's exclusive spaces have also been taken over, the toilets, the bathrooms. Sorry, I went into a toilet one day with my mom, a women's toilet, and my mom is almost blind. And then a huge man comes out of the toilet, and my mom, even though she's sight impaired, she screams, you know. So, I said, please don't scream. This is the UK. A man can actually walk into a woman's space, right? But my mom is from Nigeria, and what does she know? So there is almost no more guarantee that a woman's exclusive space can be respected. Of course, women's sports, we saw that even during the Olympics. We see that all the time. We are arguing about that. Should men be able to get into women's sports because they are identifying as women? The education that the children are also given is now completely being infiltrated, because now children are being told in the even primary and nursery school, if you feel like a boy today, you can go as a boy. If you're a boy and you want to be a princess, you can wear your pink dresses into schools. This is the education that is coming from the West. The family stability as well, that you are a mom or you're a dad, and you send your child to school and the child comes back. You send your son to school and he comes back to you as a daughter, then your parental right is definitely being infringed upon. And of course, all kinds of other things, the physical health, the fact that they are doing these surgeries that we don't know what it's going to be like in the future, and yet they are doing it. So in Africa, we're saying, we don't want it, please. We don't want to have any of this. We don't want this life for ourselves, because we've already seen where the West has gone in such a short period of time, and we simply cannot afford, with the kind of problems we have in Africa, to walk the same path as you have walked, because it's so far, I don't think it's working. The strength of the African position. See, I took this picture of this woman at a march we had, a march for the family we had a couple of years ago. And I was very surprised because she wrote on the paper by herself, male and female, he created them. I think this is something that no matter the level of education of the person you see in most of these African countries, if you ask them, they do understand. Even if they're not educated, they understand the fact that a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and there is nothing in between, and there is no binary or non-binary. This is something that is very clear, is written within our bodies, but is also more than that. So it's the African understanding and perception that maleness and femaleness is very strong. And no matter what they tell us, no matter how they punish us, no matter how they push us, we understand it as that from the point of view of tradition, from the point of view of faith as well. And the prevalent public opinions and sentiments is still firmly supporting this fact that you cannot delete the fact that somebody is male or the fact that somebody is female. And the strength of families and societies is intricately connected to the lives and roles of people as men and women. Whether we exist within our communities is also that we exist as males or females within our communities. So in the world that is drifting along in this path that has been charted by sexual revolution, we are hoping that the Africans are accepted as we are, with our views, with our values, with our voices. Thank you.